morning sun spilled through the blinds of a modest ranch-style home in suburban Columbus, Ohio, casting long shadows across a living room adorned with faded military plaques and framed family photos. Walter Grayson, 72, a retired Marine Corps gunnery sergeant, stood in his pressed flannel shirt staring at the bank app on his ancient smartphone. His weathered hands trembled slightly, not from age but from the gnawing worry that had kept him up all night. His wife Evelyn, 68, had suffered a rough bout with her worsening emphysema, her breath coming in shallow, desperate wheezes. The doctor had prescribed a new, pricier inhaler, one the pharmacy wouldn't dispense without $350, 0 cents, up front. Walter's VA pension had hit his account at midnight, as it did every first Wednesday. But now the app flashed a red alert. Account restricted. Contact your branch. Damn it, Walter muttered, his voice low but edged with the steel of a man who'd faced worse than bureaucracy, desert firefights, jungle ambushes, 30 years of service etched into his bones. He glanced at Evelyn dozing fitfully on the recliner and oxygen tube snaking across her lap. The pharmacy opened in an hour. He had to move. Grabbing his keys and a worn leather wallet, Walter drove his '98 Ford pickup to the local branch of Heartland Trust Bank, a glass and steel building that gleamed incongruously against the strip malls and diners of Broad Street. He'd banked here for decades, back when it was a small savings and loan called Buckeye Federal, before the mergers and rebrands. The tellers used to greet him by name, ask about Evelyn's garden or his grandson's little league game. Today, though, the lobby felt sterile, all polished tile and digital kiosks. A young teller, barely out of high school, stood behind the counter, his name tag reading Tyler. His gelled hair and too tight tie gave him the look of someone trying too hard to seem professional. "Morning, son," Walter said, sliding his debit card and a withdrawal slip across the counter. "Walter Grayson, need $350, 0 cents in cash, please." Tyler barely looked up, his eyes glued to the computer screen as he swiped the card. His fingers tapped rapidly, then stopped. He frowned, tapped again, and his frown deepened into something like annoyance. Mr. Grayson, there's a problem with your account." Walter's gut tightened. "Problem? My pension posted last night. I checked it myself." Tyler nodded, still staring at the screen. "Yeah, I see the deposit, but there's a system hold on it. Says here it's due to enhanced security protocols under review. No withdrawals or transfers until it's cleared." Walter leaned forward, gripping the counter's edge. "Cleared? What's that mean?" "I've been banking here since before you were born. There's never been a hold on my pension." Tyler's tone stayed flat, like he was reading from a script he didn't understand. "It's an automated flag, sir. Happens sometimes when the system's updating its fraud detection. No one at the branch can override it. Should clear in 24 to 48 business hours." 48 hours? Walter's voice rose, drawing glances from the other customers in line. "That's 3 or 4 days with weekends. My wife needs medication today. This isn't some shady wire transfer. It's my VA pension, verified every month for years." Tyler shrugged, his expression a mix of indifference and mild irritation. "I get it, sir, but it's bank policy. The hold set by our central processing unit in Chicago. I can't do anything from here." He slid a glossy pamphlet across the counter, its cover boasting Heartland Trust, your financial family. "There's a customer service number in there. You can try calling, but they'll probably say the same thing." Walter stared at the pamphlet, his jaw tightening. He'd dealt with enough call centers to know they were black holes of automated menus and scripted apologies. "Son, this is a medical emergency. Evelyn's sick. We're talking life and death here. Isn't there a manager who can cut through this nonsense?" Tyler sighed, rolling his eyes just enough to make Walter's blood simmer. "The branch manager, Mrs. Caldwell, is at a district meeting in Dayton until tonight, and even if she was here, she can't override a CPU hold. It's above her level. Policy's policy." He turned back to his screen, clearly done with the conversation. Walter felt a surge of fury, the kind that had once driven him to dress down a sloppy recruit in under 10 seconds, but he swallowed it, replaced by a heavier, colder weight, helplessness. He thought of Evelyn. her frail hands clutching the armrests of her chair, her eyes full of trust that he'd fix this. He couldn't go home empty-handed. Look, Walter said, his voice low and deliberate. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking you to do your job. Call someone. Verify the deposit. Something. I've earned that money through 30 years of service. You're telling me a computer glitch can just lock it up? Tyler didn't even turn around this time. I told you, sir, there's no one to call. It's automated. Just wait it out. He gestured vaguely at the pamphlet. Try the helpline. Walter picked up the pamphlet, its slick promises mocking him. He stepped back from the counter, his boots heavy on the tile floor. The lobby seemed to close in, the hum of fluorescent lights and the clatter of keyboards amplifying his frustration. He moved to a row of cushioned chairs near the entrance, sinking into one as he tried to think. His mind raced. Maybe he could borrow cash from his neighbor Tom or sell something quick. But the truth gnawed at him. This was his money, hard-earned, and a faceless system was holding it hostage. He pulled out his phone, not to call the useless helpline, but to scroll through his contacts. His thumb paused on a name he hadn't dialed in years, Frank Donovan, Heartland Trust HQ. Frank was a retired Army colonel turned corporate bigwig, now the CEO of Heartland Trust's parent company. They'd crossed paths during a joint military-civilian disaster relief drill in '09, a chaotic exercise where Walter's logistics expertise had saved Frank's team from a logistical nightmare. At the end, Frank had slipped him a business card with a private number scribbled on the back. "Only use this if the system screws you over, Gunny," he'd said with a wry grin. "I owe you one." Walter hesitated. Calling the CEO over a teller's incompetence felt like overkill, but this wasn't just incompetence, it was a betrayal of trust. He hit the call button. The line rang once, then a crisp, commanding voice answered. "Donovan." "Mr. Donovan, sir, this is Walter Grayson, gunnery sergeant retired. We worked together on Operation Floodgate, the relief drill in '09. A brief pause, then a warm chuckle. "Grayson, hell, I haven't forgotten you. You pulled my ass out of the fire with those supply chains. What's going on? You wouldn't call this line for a social chat." Walter laid it out, his voice steady but urgent. The pension deposit, the system hold, Evelyn's medication, the teller's refusal to escalate. He named the branch. Broad Street, Columbus. As he spoke, he heard the faint click of a keyboard on Donovan's end. "A CPU hold on a VA pension?" Donovan's tone shifted, sharp and cold. "And the branch won't lift a finger for a medical emergency? That's bullshit, Grayson. Are you still there?" "Yes, sir, in the lobby." "Sit tight. I'm 10 minutes out. This is getting fixed and heads are going to roll." The line went dead. Walter exhaled, a mix of disbelief and cautious hope settling in his chest. Frank Donovan wasn't just some suit. He was the top dog, the kind of man whose name was on every Heartland Trust annual report, and he was coming here. Now, the next 10 minutes crawled by. The lobby buzzed with its usual rhythm, customers shuffling through, tellers typing, a loan officer chatting on the phone. Tyler shot Walter a smug glance, probably thinking the old man was still wrestling with the helpline. Walter ignored him, his eyes fixed on the glass doors. At precisely 9:42 a.m., the doors slid open with a whoosh, and Frank Donovan strode in like a storm rolling off the plains. Late 50s, silver hair crop, military short. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that screamed power. His face was a mask of controlled fury, his eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Two aides trailed him, one clutching a tablet, the other a phone already to his ear. Customers and staff froze, sensing the shift in the air. Donovan spotted Walter on the chair and made a beeline for him, ignoring the gaping stares. "Walter," he said, his voice a low rumble as he extended a hand. "Good to see you. Though I'm pissed as hell it's like this." He shook Walter's hand, then turned, his gaze locking on to Tyler, who was now pale and wide-eyed behind the counter. "You," Donovan barked, pointing. "Get your manager out here, and you're coming with us." He didn't wait for a response, striding toward the manager's office as if he owned the place, which, in a way, he did. The air in the Heartland Trust Bank lobby seemed to crackle as Frank Donovan, CEO of the bank's parent corporation, stormed through the glass doors. Walter Grayson sat rigid in the cushioned chair, his calloused hands gripping his phone, the weight of the morning's despair and still pressing on his chest. The hum of the bank tellers tapping keyboards, customers murmuring the faint whir of an ATM fell silent, as if the building itself held its breath. Donovan's presence was a force, his tailored suit and silver hair a stark contrast to the mundane bustle of a Wednesday morning in Columbus. His eyes, sharp as a drill sergeant's, locked onto Walter, and for a moment the old Marine felt a flicker of the battlefield camaraderie they'd shared 16 years ago. "Walter," Donovan said, his voice a low growl that carried across the lobby. He extended a hand, his grip firm but warm, a soldier's handshake. "I'm furious this is how we meet again." His gaze softened briefly, then hardened as he turned, scanning the teller line. Tyler, the young teller who dismissed Walter with a shrug, froze behind the counter, his face draining of color as he recognized the man whose portrait hung in every Heartland Trust branch. "You," Donovan snapped, pointing a finger that seemed to pin Tyler in place. "Get your manager, now, and you're coming with me." Tyler stammered, his earlier smugness evaporating. He scrambled to the phone, muttering something about Mrs. Caldwell. Donovan didn't wait, striding toward the manager's office with the urgency of a man on a mission. His two aides followed, one tapping furiously on a tablet, the other barking orders into a phone. Walter rose, his psyche stiff but his resolve unbroken, and followed at Donovan's gesture. The lobby's stunned silence broke into whispers as customers and staff exchanged wide-eyed glances. Who was this man, and why was the CEO himself here? The manager's office was a glass-walled box, its blinds half open, offering no privacy from the gawking lobby. Mrs. Caldwell, the branch manager, burst through the side entrance, her heels clicking frantically. Mid-40s, with a severe bob and a pantsuit that screamed corporate ambition, she looked like someone who thrived on control, until now. Her eyes widened as she recognized Donovan, and she nearly dropped her coffee cup. "Mr. Donovan, sir," she gasped. I wasn't expecting." "Clearly," Donovan cut her off, his voice like a blade. He gestured for Walter to sit, but remained standing himself, his presence filling the room. Tyler slunk in behind Caldwell, looking like a kid caught stealing. "Mrs. Caldwell, tell it, Tyler." Donovan began, his tone dangerously calm. "I've just been informed by Gunnery Sergeant Walter Grayson, a Marine Corps veteran who served this country for 3 decades, that his VA pension, his earned lifeline, was frozen this morning by a system error. He was denied funds for his wife's critical medication, and your response was to hand him a pamphlet and tell him to wait 3 days. Is that correct?" Caldwell's mouth opened, then closed, her face flushing. "Sir, it was a CPU security hold. A system-wide protocol. We followed policy." "Your policy," Donovan interrupted, his voice rising, "is to serve your customers, not to hide behind a computer glitch while a veteran's wife struggles to breathe." He slammed a hand on the desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Walter flinched, not from fear, but from the raw emotion in Donovan's words. "Evelyn Grayson is fighting for every breath, and you left her husband, a man who's faced enemy fire, to beg for his own money. That's not policy, that's a disgrace." Tyler shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the floor. I didn't know about any override protocol, sir," he mumbled. "I just followed the screen." Donovan rounded on him, his eyes blazing. "You didn't know? Then you're untrained, and you," he turned to Caldwell, "are failing as a leader if your staff can't handle a medical emergency for a loyal customer of 40 years. He pulled out a sleek phone, dialed, and barked. "IT, this is Donovan. Lift the CPU hold on account ending 9274, Grayson. W, effective immediately. Flag it for a full diagnostic. I want a report on why a VA pension triggered this mess by end of day." Schumann listened for a moment, then snapped, "Do it now." He hung up, his jaw tight. Walter sat quietly, his heart pounding. He'd seen commanders take charge in chaos, but this was different, personal, visceral. He thought of Evelyn, her frail frame trembling with each labored breath, her trust in him unwavering even as her illness stole her strength. The shame of returning home empty-handed had nearly broken him. Now, watching Donovan dismantle the system that had failed him, he felt a swell of gratitude and something deeper, a validation of the sacrifices he'd made, the battles he'd fought, the quiet dignity he'd clung to. "Mr. Grayson," Donovan said, turning to him, his tone softening but still commanding respect, "your account is unlocked. Mrs. Caldwell will personally process your withdrawal, but that's not enough." He paused, his eyes locking onto Walter's. "Heartland Trust failed you today, and I take that personally. As of now, the bank will cover Evelyn's medication costs, every copay, every inhaler, for the next year, directly from my office's discretionary fund, and I'm assigning a dedicated liaison to your account to ensure this never happens again." Walter's throat tightened, his eyes stinging. He tried to speak, but the words caught, tangled in decades of stoicism. "Mr. Donovan," he managed, his voice rough. I don't know how to thank you. Evelyn, she's everything to me." Donovan shook his head, his expression softening further. "No, Walter, thank you for your service, for your patience, for reminding us what this bank is supposed to stand for." He turned back to Caldwell and Tyler, his face hardening again. "As for you two, my head of HR will be in touch by noon. Expect retraining and a full review of your roles here. This bank does not abandon its veterans. Not on my watch." Caldwell nodded mutely, her confidence shattered. Tyler looked like he might faint. Donovan didn't spare them another glance, instead guiding Walter out of the office. The lobby had grown crowded, customers and staff craning their necks to witness the fallout. Caldwell scurried to the teller line, her hands shaking as she processed Walter's $350.00 withdrawal, adding a printed apology from the bank's system, a hollow gesture next to Donovan's actions. As Walter clutched the cash, Donovan placed a hand on his shoulder. "Go get Evelyn her medicine," he said quietly, "and call me directly if you ever need anything. You've got my number." Walter nodded, his vision blurring. He stepped toward the doors, the weight of the morning lifting with each step. Behind him, Donovan addressed the staff, his voice carrying through the lobby like a general's command. "Let this be a lesson," he said. "Our systems are tools, not gods. Our veterans, our customers, are the heart of this bank. Fail them, and you fail me." The doors slid shut behind Walter, but the echo of Donovan's words followed him into the parking lot. He climbed into his truck, the cash tucked safely in his wallet, and let out a shaky breath. For the first time that day, he allowed himself to hope. Evelyn would breathe easier tonight, not just because of the medicine, but because someone had seen them, really seen them, as more than an account number. As he drove toward the pharmacy, a single tear slipped down his cheek, not of sorrow, but of relief, of vindication, of knowing that sometimes, just sometimes, the system could be forced to bend for those who'd given everything to protect it. Walter Grayson's old Ford pickup rumbled out of the Heartland Trust Bank parking lot, the $350.00 in his wallet feeling heavier than it should. The Columbus sun beat down, glinting off the hood, but inside the cab, a quiet hope flickered. Evelyn's new inhaler was within reach, and Frank Donovan's promise, medication costs covered for a year, a personal liaison, echoed in Walter's mind. As he drove toward the pharmacy, the memory of Donovan's thunderous voice in the bank lobby lingered, a reminder that sometimes the system could be forced to bend. But as he glanced at the rearview mirror, catching the bank's gleaming facade fading into the distance, a nagging question tugged at him. Would this be a one-off victory, or could it spark something bigger? Back at the bank, the lobby was a hive of stunned whispers. Customers lingered, their transactions forgotten, as tellers exchanged hushed theories about the CEO's dramatic arrival. Mrs. Caldwell, her face still flushed from Donovan's dressing down, processed Walter's withdrawal with trembling hands. Her usual air of authority shattered. Tyler, the young teller, had been sent home, his future at Heartland Trust hanging by a thread. But Donovan wasn't done. As Walter's truck disappeared down Broad Street, the CEO stood in the manager's office, his aides flanking him like sentinels. He pulled out his phone again, this time dialing the head of corporate operations. "Get me a meeting with the board," he barked. "Tomorrow, and I want every regional manager on a call by tonight. We're fixing this permanently." Donovan's fury wasn't just about Walter Grayson. It was about a system that had grown cold, mechanical, blind to the human stories behind its account numbers. Walter's call had been a wake-up call, a reminder of the veterans, men and women like him who'd sacrificed everything, only to be stonewalled by bureaucracy. Donovan, a veteran himself, felt the weight of that betrayal in his bones. He'd built Heartland Trust's parent company into a financial titan, but today he saw its flaws laid bare. "This stops now," he told his aides, his voice low but resolute. "We're not just a bank, we're a lifeline, and we're going to act like it." By the next morning, Heartland Trust's corporate headquarters in Chicago was a flurry of activity. Donovan's emergency board meeting was no mere formality, it was a reckoning. He stood at the head of a mahogany table, his silver hair catching the light, and laid out a plan that would reshape the bank's soul. Effective immediately, he declared, "We're launching the Veterans First Initiative. Every branch, every employee will prioritize our veteran customers. Simplified pension verifications, dedicated liaisons, and mandatory training on empathy and emergency protocols. No more CPU holds stranding heroes like Walter Grayson. No more excuses." The board, a mix of seasoned executives and skeptical investors, leaned forward, some nodding, others scribbling notes. One director, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire Hargrove, raised a hand. "Frank, this is ambitious, but what's the cost? Training thousands of employees, hiring liaisons, it's a big spend." Donovan's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "The cost? Go ask Evelyn Grayson, who's fighting to breathe because we failed her husband. Ask the veterans who served this country, only to be told their money's locked behind a computer glitch. The cost of doing nothing is our integrity. We're doing this or I'm out." The room fell silent. Hargrove nodded, her skepticism giving way to respect. The board voted unanimously to greenlight the initiative, and by noon, a company-wide memo hit every employee's inbox. Titled "A New Standard Honoring Our Veterans," it detailed the Veterans First Initiative, citing Walter Grayson's ordeal as the catalyst. The memo didn't name him explicitly, but the story spread like wildfire, first through the Columbus branch, then across Heartland Trust's 1,200 locations. Employees whispered about the Marine gunnery sergeant who'd stood up to a broken system, and the CEO who'd stormed in to fix it. In the weeks that followed, the initiative took shape with a speed that stunned even Donovan's aides. Training programs rolled out, teaching tellers how to spot and escalate veteran issues, from pension holds to medical emergencies. Dedicated liaisons, many of them veterans themselves, were hired, their direct lines printed on new business cards handed to every VA account holder. Heartland Trustee Department overhauled its security protocols, ensuring no pension deposit would ever trigger a false flag again, and in every branch, a small plaque went up near the entrance, engraved with a simple promise: "To our veterans, your service is our priority." Walter, meanwhile, returned home with Evelyn's inhaler, watching her breathe easier for the first time in days. He didn't tell her about the bank ordeal, not yet. He wanted her to rest, to feel safe. But a week later, a letter arrived from Heartland Trust, signed by Donovan himself. It outlined the bank's commitment to covering Evelyn's medication for a year and introduced their new liaison, a retired Army captain named Maria Torres, who'd already called to check in. Evelyn, reading the letter over her morning coffee, looked at Walter with tear-filled eyes. "You did this, didn't you?" she whispered. Walter shrugged, his own eyes misty. "I just made a call, Evie." The story of Walter Grayson didn't stay confined to Columbus. A local news outlet picked it up, running a segment titled "Veterans Fight Sparks Bank Reform." The piece went viral, shared across social media by veterans groups, military families, and everyday Americans outraged by the idea of a hero being denied his due. Posts on X called Walter a quiet warrior, while others praised Donovan as a leader who gets it. Heartland Trust stock dipped briefly as investors fretted over the initiative's costs, but it rebounded when customer approval ratings soared, especially among the military community. But the story wasn't over. 3 months later, Walter received an unexpected call from Donovan. "Walter," the CEO said, his voice warm but tinged with urgency, "I need your help." He explained that the Veterans First initiative was thriving, but challenges remained. Branches resisting change, employees struggling with the new protocols, and a handful of corporate holdouts pushing back on costs. Donovan wanted Walter to speak at Heartland Trust's annual conference in Chicago, to share his story, to remind thousands of employees why this mattered. "You're not just a customer," Donovan said. "You're the heart of this. Will you do it?" Walter hesitated, his instinct to stay out of the spotlight warring with the fire in his gut. He thought of Evelyn, of the other veterans out there still fighting faceless systems. He thought of the young tellers like Tyler, who needed to understand the weight of their choices. And he thought of the plaque now hanging in the Columbus branch, its promise still fresh. "I'll do it," he said finally, his voice steady. "For Evelyn, for all of 'em." As Walter hung up, he looked out the window at the Ohio sunset, its reds and golds painting the sky like a battlefield at dusk. He didn't know what lay ahead, whether his words would move a room of suits, whether Heartland Trust changes would last, or whether other veterans would find the same justice he had. But for the first time in years, he felt a spark of purpose, a call to fight, not with a rifle, but with his story. The system had bent once. Maybe, just maybe, it could bend again. And somewhere, in another branch, another veteran stood at a counter, clutching a withdrawal slip, hoping for a teller who'd listen. Would Heartland Trust's promise hold? Would the Veterans First initiative be more than words on a plaque? Or would the system, vast and unyielding, swallow another hero whole? Only time, and Walter's voice, would tell.